Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today we're going to be talking about Cartier watches, and Cartier is very difficult to talk about for a number of reasons. On the one hand, they had some fabulous watches, and historically they're really very interesting. Then they went into, in the 70s, they came out with this whole terrible line of stuff called Must de Cartier. And they started making a bunch of cheap stuff, in particular some cheap watches. And more recently, though, they've been coming back. And all along, there was sort of like this, almost an underground Cartier doing some just incredibly good stuff. And so the problem's been is to separate the wheat from the chaff with Cartier, and it's not been easy. Anyway, bear with me. It was sort of almost a love-hate relationship. To get started, the first watch I want to take a look at is the Santos de Cartier. Now, this was named for Alberto Santos Dumont. He was a pilot, a Brazilian pilot, and really a pioneer in flying. And he was complaining to Cartier about the problem of pocket watches not being very practical for flying. And so Cartier made him this watch, and so it was named the Santos. And so this is really the first wristwatch that they made. Now, the modern, and it went through a number of stages, and the one that's called the Cartier Santos Dumont is quartz. I couldn't believe they had that cool after a pilot. Anyway, we'll forget that one. But this one, the Santos de Cartier, cool watch, the design, everything about it I like. Now, when I say everything, this is the one with the Calibre 1847 MC in it. And this becomes very important because you have some good Cartier movements that were developed by an award-winning watchmaker. So, really a good watchmaker. And then you have sort of off-the-shelf ones. Okay, now, first of all, one of the things I think about this Santos de Cartier, and this is with the metal bracelet on it, they have, first of all, on a metal bracelet, they have something called a Smart Link bracelet, and it's a very, very ingenious bracelet because using your standard spring bar tool, you can push certain parts and pull certain parts with exactly the tool that you use to take off leather bands and take off links of this band. It also have one of the models they have, and I don't think it's this one, but it could be, works with both metal bands and with leather bands. So now, the Calibre 1847 MC, it's automatic, has a reserve of 42 hours, and it ticks at 28,800 VPH, which is, nothing exciting. All right. Okay, so the movement is, but it is in-house. It's made by Cartier, and it may be helped along by Val Fleurier, which has become Richemont's movement maker. And I know that Cartier has been involved in that with some other companies. We'll get to that in a bit. This particular model is the large model, and it's 39.8 millimeters width on it. And the medium model is 35.1. So this is a good thing, I think, because a lot of guys like smaller watches, some other guys like bigger watches, and so for a men's watch, I think it's a good idea to have these different ones. And in terms of, somebody asked me about what tier would this go on. Well, it's a good example of strong horology. And anyway, this particular one is one of my favorite. Now, the second one is another very problematic, and it's called a tank, but it's it was originally called a tank, and it was developed in 1919 by Cartier, by Louis Cartier, and it was named after the World War I tank that went running around, crawling over the trenches in the First World War. And I'm not sure why they called it that. Maybe they thought, well, we want to have a sturdy men's watch, so we're going to call it a tank. Now, this went through a lot of different movements and God knows what, but it came out with another interesting movement called the 1904 PSMC, 1904, commemorating also when the tank was, when Santos was first made. All right, now this is self-winding movement, small seconds in date, and it was introduced in 2010. Again, there's 48 hours is pretty decent reserve on it, and 28,800 is standard 4 hertz kind of movement. And it's an iconic design. Now, both the Santos, with all of its rivets around it, and the tank are rectangular shaped watches with more of a squarey center than more toward the Tourneau sort of Tourneau stretch in it. Okay, so the Santos and the tank are two main ones, but in looking for either one of them, you got to be careful because they'll have a quartz in it, they'll have an ETA, or God knows what. If they have MC, that means manufactured Cartier. Okay, that's the same as saying in-house. I like MC actually better, but so that's the thing to look for if you're interested in a tank. All right, now this next one one's called Drive de Cartier, extra flat. Now, Drive de Cartier is really a whole sort of a line of watches, and they use a what's called the Cartier Calibre 430 MC, which is really a Piaget 430P, and for their thin watches. Now, this is something else that Cartier does, and quite frankly, I think it's not a bad idea. The bad idea is when they have who knows what in the watch. That drives me nuts about Cartier. So the ones I'm talking about are all based on in-house or something that is equivalent to that. Now, the reason I'm talking about Piaget is that Piaget and Cartier often share certain movements that are developed through Val Fleurier, which is the Richemont movement-making company. So that's something else. Now here you have the on the left there, the one with the blue band, 39 millimeter, is the Drive de Cartier. Now the smaller one down there they both have the same movement. That's how come I thought, well, I'll put them up so we can look at them. It's called the Rotonde de Cartier, and now this one is called Calibre Power Reserve. It's a hand wound movement, and it runs at 3 hertz. Which to me is much nicer. I like 3 hertz because it doesn't require service quite as much, and it requires finer tolerances, I think. Okay, so that's the other. So you have a Drive de Cartier. We'll get back to some other example of the Rotonde de Cartier in a bit, but for now, this is their hand wound movement. Okay, and in different watches with it will have the hand wound movement, if that's what you like, and I do, so I like it. Okay, now this next watch, the Ballon Bleu. One day, the Duchess of Cambridge was waving at somebody. This is before she became the Duchess when she was dating the Prince. And she had one of these on. Now, we don't know whether it was quartz or whether it was an automatic or in-house or ET. Nobody knows. It's just her Ballon Bleu. Well, that thing took off. I mean, like a rocket to the moon. A lot of women wanted this. And since they were they came out with both men and women versions of it, because it then became super popular on the women's side. It's sort of an interesting design for several reasons. one of the big things about the Ballon Bleu, though, is that it has different movements. Now, right now, if you go to their website, you're going to find two, or actually more than two, apparently identical Ballon Bleus for men. Okay, they're the same size and everything, except one's blue and one's white. I think there's some other colors, but only the blue one has the caliber 1847 MC, the manufacturer Cartier, and it's 6250. On the other hand, the other ones have what's called the Cartier 049. This is an ETA 2892-A2. Now, quick story here. You know, I was looked at this and I didn't know, because at the Cartier site they had the movement for the blue one, the caliber 1847 MC, which is one of their main in-house movements, so their workhorse really. And then they had the other one with nothing. It just said it's an automatic. Well, they're both automatics. So I contacted Cartier and I got one of their ambassadors. Poor guy. So this was on their text messages. Hello, I'm your ambassador. So I said, what is that? And I described it. That white one is $6,000 Ballon Bleu. I said, what kind of movement does it have? He says it's automatic. I said, yeah, I know it's automatic. I said, what caliber does it have? So he comes back and he says, well, it's got something like the standard Cartier automatic movement. The guy didn't want to tell me what it was. So finally I said, is it an 049? And he said, yeah. On the other end, his boss was, don't tell him what it really is. Because if you go to watchbase.com and you look up under Cartier what an 049 is, they'll tell you it's basically an ETA 2892. This is what I don't like about Cartier, is that they have a hard time telling you the whole story. Now, what I think is going on, at least with the Ballon Bleu, they made so many of the things. I think they had a big stock of them with a Cartier 049 Cartier ETA 2892. I think they had a bunch of those things, and so they're selling them like mad. And so then they thought, well, you know, people, they're running out of 2892, so say, hey, listen, why don't we put one of our own calibers in there, and then we can, you know, ask a little more for it, since we do have them now. So this is the kind of stuff that's going on. But I mean, you're looking at a single and a model, and the only difference is the color, and they have two different movements in it. Man, I tell you, that kind of stuff just drives me nuts. Now you might say, well, ETA 2892-A2 is a really good movement. It probably is. It's probably a decent movement. I have no doubt about that. But that's, again, not the point. We should know what we're paying for. Okay. Well, so much for the Ballon Bleu. Believe me, the Duchess of Cambridge has much more to say about how she's going to sell than I ever will. All right, let's move right along here. Okay, now this other one, we had seen a smaller version of this, of the Rotonde de Cartier. Now this one is the Chronograph, and this is the name of the movement is 1904-CH. They'll have different little things in there. And they also have a Santos with also the same movement in it. Now, this particular one, Carol Forestier Casapi won the Watchmaker of the Year, I think it was in 2012. When she took over Cartier's fine watchmaking division at Cartier, of course, they launched 29 new movements and 50 new references, but the 29 new movements, man, I tell you, that's huge. Now, the movements, some of them were versions of, like the 1904 has the CH, the MS, and some other ones, but the point is that they are in-house developed and so forth. Now, this particular one was something that there was some work done either by this particular movement or this particular version of the movement by Valfleuier. And so this may find a home in some of the other Richemont brands. But this is a movement that was done by one of the top watchmakers around. Now they use, like I said, they also used it in the Santos Chronograph, same movement, and these things they're getting pretty close to $10,000. So it's a very good movement. The Rotonde de Cartier or the Santos simply is a matter of style, which kind of style that you might prefer on these. All right, now the Calibre de Cartier. This is an important one. It's got the 1904 PC in it, which is another version of it. And the Calibre de Cartier, all of these watches, all of the Calibre de Cartier are supposed to have movements that are developed by Cartier, the MC movement Cartier, or manufacturer Cartier. The one on the left is called the large steel. The one on the right is the diver. The diver's got a rubber strap. The other one has a gator strap. And it looks like as a diver, you have that rotating bezel and so forth. So again, a Calibre de Cartier, using one of their, what you're getting is you're getting a certain design with a sort of a movement, a very flexible movement. All right, now Clé de Cartier is another one. Now I just have two here, but the other ones that they have are like, they go up over $100,000. The basic Clé de Cartier has the caliber 1847. That's their workhorse, one of their two workhorse calibers. The other one's the 1904. This one, again, we're really talking pretty much about design. $5,000, great entry level for an in-house movement and so forth. Now, this particular one I sort of pulled out of a bag. They also have a tourbillon. They may have a couple tourbillons in some of the movements in this, but the movement they put in there, for example, this Calibre 9981 MC, man, that's in-house. They developed it for this, what's called the Mysterious Hour watch. And, and they're $68,000 watch. And they have some other ones that are also with their own movement. They're very pricey. I think this was the work of Carol I'd say it wrong. It's Forestier Casapi. Her stuff when she was in there, they talked about all these new movements she developed. While they were doing it, they put in some really interesting ones too. So this is the thing about Cartier. On the one hand, I just like, come on, guys, let's just tell us what the movements in those things, and price them accordingly. But they're so dodgy about it. That drives me nuts. Okay. Now here's another one, the Torture. The Torture, it's got that caliber 430, which Piaget based on that. The Torture, they only have two models. I think one is pink gold and the other one's white gold. But what I found was this is one of the things that just amazing. There was an older watch that they did about, maybe it was 20 years ago now. And this was when F.P. Journe and Denis Flagolet and Vianney Halder were young guys. They were just getting started which eventually became their own one. And they made a movement for them. And the movement they made is just it's incredible. But, does Cartier say, hey, we got this movement by these guys, by THA. That was the name of the company they had, not Cartier, but the one that they hired to develop the movement for this Montpousseur chronograph. they should have said, hey, that's, but they didn't. So if you can find one of these things for something that's affordable, I think they're a smaller size. I think they're 34 millimeter. Man, I tell you, that's a watch I wouldn't mind having at all because that movement in there is just fantastic. This is Cartier. All right, now this is my favorite Cartier. It's called the Cartier Tank Fouet. These things, I don't think they make them anymore. They're $40,000. You can still find some of them. But, this is a kind of incredible creativity. You get a watch like that, and you have a movement inside that works. I have no idea what movement is in there, but it's got to be interesting. And sort of this is the whole thing about Cartier, is that you have this company that has these great designs, this incredible history, something for pilots, something for their whole line of women's watches that I didn't get into. It just as a whole other story, not to mention jewelry and everything else that they have. They're really an amazing stuff. But then they got these fudgers in there. They're saying, what's in your. When I was text chatting with that guy at Cartier, the ambassador, it cracks me up. And this poor guy was going back. You could tell he was going back and forth. What should I say, boss? Oh, we can't get caught in all. We got to tell them the truth. So, all right. So just tell them this, and then just tell them this, and then he told me what I wanted to know. He could have said right off the bat, it's got a Cartier 049 movement. That's it. Next, but he didn't. He had to go through all of this rigmarole, and it's sort of like squeezing it out of him. They could change that policy very easily, and especially now that they're putting all of they're putting their own movements in. You can start, when you go to buy a watch, it'll say this has got a 1904 MC in it, or this one's got a 1847, or it's got the 430, or that thing that they made for the that mysterious hour hand. That's not that hard. If they want to keep putting ETAs in there, that's fine. I got no problem with that. Lower the price, make them highly affordable. You can shove those things out the door in Ballon Bleus all day long. In fact, a lot of them have quartz in them, and they do that. This is the Santos Dumont. I really wish they hadn't. That's only available in quartz. Why do they do that for? They did. Okay. Well, listen, naturally, I'd like your opinion. You certainly had mine. And it's something to think about. I have on my Henry double hairspring, one of my favorite watches, but it was sort of squarey, so I thought I'd wear it today, sort of go along with the Santos and the tank. And if you'd like to, it's an invitation to subscribe. And also on Sunday, we're going to have another collection review. I think you're going to like it. Until then, this is Bill Sanders for Watch Art Side, the Art and Science of Watch Collection.